Groupie show was love.
Oh, okay. Other Matt singing as we enter the live stream here. Hello, everybody. Welcome. There's like 3 million people here. I know it. They're just waiting for us to go live. So, um, oh God.
Are we
I
not
forgot
live?
to. We are indeed. We
Oh.
are live and having a grand old time here today. So, I don't know if you guys want to just talk some Sens. We can talk about how that Sens Avs game was last night because that
Sure.
was quite a game. Did you guys stay up to watch the whole thing?
No,
Yeah.
after the second period, I decided I wanted to watch X-Files, and I also think I
Bro.
might be a little superstitious, and that I'm
Oh.
losing the Sens games by watching them. So
That's why
Yeah.
we're losing.
that's not
I
what
feel that.
happened, though.
So
They
here's
lost.
the real question though. What was scarier, the Sens defense or the episode of the X-Files you watched?
Oh, there we go. That's a good question.
There what like the X-Files episode, like it was a to be continued episode, so it went into the next episode, and it was all about like this extraterrestrial disease that came from this moon rock, and
Oh shit.
it was wild.
Dude, what are you watching?
Yeah.
X-Files.
I got 2 seasons into
Oh.
the X-Files, but I never finished it.
All right. Well, on that note about X-Files, Chris is joining us. So we're going to get Chris in the stream and talk about the Sens and not X-Files. Chris, welcome to the stream.
Hey, thanks for having me again, guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Hello.
Always a pleasure. Love talking Senators and everything else hockey with you guys.
Yeah, I like your little poster back there.
Yeah, I got to promote the brand, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I respect the
Stevenson
hustle for
Media.
sure.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Well, we know that we have you for a limited amount of time today, so I'll let Bennett start us off with the questions we have lined up for you tonight.
Go for it.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks again for joining us, Chris. Super appreciate it. So we wanted to kick off the questions today with a bit of looking back at the offseason that we had and where we are right now. So we'll all recall that GM Pierre Dorion stated this summer that the rebuild was over and that the Sens were ready to push on and start to compete for a playoff spot. Has what you've seen so far from the Sens this season changed your outlook on the trajectory of this team? And how did you interpret Pierre's comments earlier this summer?
Yeah, I think there's been a little bit of misunderstanding in terms of what he might have meant by the rebuild is over. I don't think it meant the rebuild's over and we're transitioning into being a competitive playoff team right now. I think what he meant by rebuild is over is that the shipping out of assets of top players like Carlson and Stone, that was over and that they were ready to move on to the next phase, which is, I think incorporating the prospects into the lineup. I think figuring out where you are with those players, trying to understand, I think most importantly, what their potential might be so that you can address other concerns. If Josh Norris is showing that he's not capable of being a potential number one center, what do you do in that scenario? So I think that's what this season, the next phase of the rebuild is about. And I think, maybe Pierre Dorion's taken a little bit of unnecessary heat from people jumping on that comment and maybe interpreting as like the rebuild's over, we're ready to win.
Yeah.
Whatever he meant, looking at the situation, and as we've seen this season unfold so far, it's clear that they're not ready to win at this point. I think what we're looking at is a team that's not going to be shipping out top assets now, but rather trying to insulate them, add to them, and hopefully at some point get a system of play in there that is going to allow them to be competitive. And the bottom line with that, I'm sure we'll get into it, is better team defense, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a perfect transition for Other Matt to jump in here with his question.
Other Matt.
He's done this longer than we so he's very good at it. My Uncle Bill listens to TSN 1200 religiously, and he's been saying, that you've been talking about Jacques Martin and how he used to do things defensively for the team.
Yeah.
Do you think the team probably needs to sort of go that route? Maybe not overthinking their defensive style of play, making things too complicated and just going back to basics?
It's a great question, and it's a great and critical question, I think, for the Senators right now, because they need to figure out where they're going next. Like I said, as they enter this next stage of the rebuild. And, I said going into this season that cutting about a half a goal a game off of their goals against average was going to be crucial in making that transition to being a competitive team, to being a team that you could consider a playoff contender. And that hasn't happened so far. It's been as much a disaster, frankly, as it was last year. When you're running at about 3.80 goals against, when you need to be in the 3 range to be middle of the pack in the National Hockey League, it's clear how much work they still have to do. The Jacques Martin comparison, I think, is a good one, because he came in, and remember when he came in, he took over a team that was at the bottom of the league as well, 95, 96. And he installed a system of play that allowed them to be competitive. And in fact, had him on TSN 1200 last week. More to talk about Marian Hossa going into the Hockey Hall of Fame, because obviously Jacques had a huge role in forming Marian Hossa's habits and helping him evolve into one of the best two-way players in the game that's ever been. And the conversation did move to why were those teams so good defensively, and Jacques' touchstones were that you needed a commitment to provide back pressure from the forwards. And that's interesting, because I'm going to bring up an example from the game against Colorado where that did not happen. And also that you needed a commitment from all 5 guys on the ice. And I think this is another area where people have different opinions or takes on it. And you can talk about the goaltending. You can talk about the defense, the defensemen as a group. But for me, ultimately, great defense in the National Hockey League is about playing as a 5-man unit when you're on the ice. And that, for me, right now is where the Senators have been falling down terribly. Like, I think about that third goal that Colorado scored last night. Ottawa has a scoring chance in the Colorado zone. Puck winds up coming out. Colorado breaks the puck out, comes through the neutral zone. They've got a little bit of a man advantage by the time they get to the Ottawa blue line. Del Zotto steps up because I think it's Burakovsky's carrying the puck, and he makes the decision to step up on him just inside the blue line. But he's got no support from a forward coming back. The only guy that's really in position is Josh Norris in the middle of the ice, and it's near the end of the shift. I think he's not in great position. So Del Zotto steps up. No back pressure is there, so he dishes the puck to Kadri. Now Kadri breaks down the right wing, and it's a 2-on-1 with poor Lassie Thompson in the middle of the ice, and Taves has jumped up to join the play for Colorado, and he's busting for the far post. And you can see, if you watch the replay, that Lassie Thompson actually makes a gesture to Josh Norris that's basically, hey, it's a 2-on-1 now. You've got to get that guy coming in on in the backside. And Norris never gets there. The puck goes across, and they've got a goal. So that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about in terms of 5-man units, trusting each other, back pressure. And we just have not seen that.
And
no, I was just going to say, has the general manager gotten his share of heat for poor off-season signings? For sure.
I mean,
deservedly so. Have the defensemen as a group taken their share of heat? For sure. Man, the coaching staff has got to be held accountable too here, because again, here we are 15, 16 games into the season. I'm not seeing any tangible proof that this team is moving forward in terms of better team defense.
And you'd be right, because we're 32nd in the league right now. So, but I was going to say, even on the first goal, like, there's some basic defensive things that are just not taking place. And I don't want to rag on Josh Brown the whole episode. There's been a lot of discourse
Might be half of
that.
it though.
Yeah, it's on Twitter enough, but on that first goal, as he's behind the net and the puck comes out in front of the net, he turns around and instead of pressuring his man who's going to the side of the net, he actually like eases up on him. And you can actually see he doesn't try to use his body.
Yeah.
He doesn't try to lift the stick. He just kind of goes behind him and then watches the play, and the puck goes in seconds later, right?
Yeah.
And it's like basic stuff like that.
There was a lot that went wrong on that play. And again, not to pick on Josh Norris, he didn't have a great game, and he's still a young guy trying to play a tough position. Number one center in the National Hockey League. Most nights going up against the top guy, it's not easy. It's a tough learning on the job situation. But what's he doing putting the puck back to the front of the net to Josh Norris? Because now he puts Josh Brown, because he puts Brown in a tough spot now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Heat's coming, forecheck is coming. Brown's first thought is, I need to get behind the net now to protect the puck and give myself a little bit of room. He tries to reverse the puck to Mete, but it hits the skate of one of the Avalanche forechecker. Now Mete's in the corner waiting for the reverse, and nobody's in front. And this is what I'm talking about. The constant bad decision on top of bad decision, maybe a little bit of a bad break. But it's funny how when you make good decisions, you're in a position to recover from a bad break. And you're absolutely right. Like that was a situation right off of the bat, your first game back coming out of COVID on the first shift of the game. And you compound your mistakes and you wind up being down 1-0 right off of the bat.
And I think you make a really good point about the tangible differences that we're not seeing. And I think that comes from different, obviously, defense pairings. It's different lineups with more defensive-minded players, and it probably also starts in practice with the behind-the-scenes stuff that we're not able to see. And I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing until the end of time. And and so it's just frustrating that we have a third-year coach here who we have seen time and time again saying he's going to play the best players. That's just not happening, especially if Zaitsev and Brown are going to be coming in over a younger player who has been playing better in Lassie Thompson. But maybe changing the system that you think is going to continuously get you wins, and it's just seemingly doing the opposite. It's really unfortunate that we're at this point, because you want to see younger guys like Stützle, like Josh Norris, like Tkachuk even, putting this mentality of winning games, and that starts from the coach.
Yeah, and the young player thing is always going to be a bit of a tightrope, because even if at this point they are better than some of the retread journeymen that you have as options to put into your lineup, I think you need to closely monitor how they're progressing, and just the fact that they're better than what you've got to put on the ice at this point doesn't necessarily mean that you should. I think it's important to monitor. Is Lassie Thompson continuing to learn? Is his game still on an upward trajectory? Where's his confidence at? Is he being taken advantage of? I think you need to weigh all of those things apart from where he might fit into your lineup. Clearly, right now, he is a better option than half of the guys that you've got, right? Where would you put him right now? Third behind Shabbat, Zub, Lassie Thompson?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, on the right side, he's definitely our second best right defender.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, to me, there's more that goes into it than, okay, right now he is the second best defenseman on the right side. I think you need to do what's best for Lassie Thompson, and not necessarily what's best for the Ottawa Senators in what's quickly looking like another spin your wheels, tread water season, where it's already feeling like you're not going to get enough wins to really be a competitive team. So focus rather than on the team situation with your young guys, focus on the individuals and what's best for them, and grabbing an extra point or two this season because you got Lassie Thompson in your lineups, not worth it if it's going to mean Lassie Thompson's not going to be the best defenseman he can be when he's 22 or 23 years old. That's the way I feel about it anyway.
Yeah, it's like, what's the virtue of Lassie Thompson getting cratered night in, night out, just for us to, have a slightly less bad season than we would be having? Yeah.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. So, right now he's holding his own. Like I think he's been really competitive. He's made positive plays with the puck. Most of the time when he's on the ice and a goal is scored, you wouldn't look at him as being the culprit. So, the plus minus can always be a little bit misleading, but so far I've been impressed with him, and the leaps that he's made in his game from last year to this year have really been impressive and really encouraging, because it makes you feel like, that the potential's there for him to grow some more.
100%.
Yeah, I think he was written off by last.
Well, he was an afterthought, right? Because everybody
Yeah.
talked about. I mean, Shabbat, rightly so. You look at him when you're penciling in a lineup that maybe would take the ice in 2 or 3 years from now. Shabbat's at the top of your list, and then you've got Zub, who has been an unexpected surprise and a rare example of some good pro scouting by the Senators. And after that, Jake Sanderson was getting a lot of the attention, and even Jacob Bernard Docker. I think all those guys were mentioned before Lassie Thompson, right? Yeah. And maybe that was good for Lassie Thompson to just kind of be in the weeds, take his time, play in the American Hockey League last year, start the year in the American Hockey League this year, not really having much in the way of expectations on him, and have him step in with the way that he has this year and been a really pleasant surprise.
Now, we'll kind of go back a little bit. So you kind of touched on it slightly, but you're right. It's another season where the Sens are spinning their tires and stagnating, and obviously, like I said earlier, they're 32nd in the standings, so they're dead last. So is this season really like a write-off at this point in terms of having those like playoff aspirations that management and even some of the players were talking about come summer?
Do we write off the playoff aspirations?
Yeah, like the optimism of potentially getting a wild card spot.
Yeah, I don't think that's realistic at this point when you look at how many wins they are behind in the wins column already, when you're looking at the potential playoff teams, and that's not even just starting to make a list of the teams that you think are going to finish ahead of them. I look at this season again as almost like I was going to say a free space on the bingo card for you to do what you want to do without really having a lot of pressure on you. And that's why I feel like it's so important now. And maybe the tone that the coach set after the loss to Colorado is indicative of maybe things getting ratcheted up, because I feel like this is the free space on the bingo card. This is the time where you can try and put a good defensive system in. And if it takes a while for players to adapt, which clearly it has, I'm not even sure exactly what kind of, I don't know if they play a zone. I don't know if they play a man-to-man, because it seems to shift every shift. But here's your opportunity to allow people to make mistakes and to grow and live with whatever structure you're putting in, because let's face it, I mean, already here we are at the end of November. I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to say that the expectation of wins has already been lifted. Like watching this team, you'd love to see them win. Every Senator fan wants to see their team win. You want to see the kids get some positive enforcement from all the work that they're putting in. But at this point, for a variety of reasons, I mean, it's really difficult to see the Senators being anything but a lottery team at this point.
Which I honestly
don't think agree or disagree?
No, like we did our predictions.
I agree.
Yeah, we did our predictions prior to the season starting, and I think we were all pretty unanimous in the team being in the bottom half of the league again.
Yeah.
So, because they didn't really make any massive overhaul changes to fix either the blue line or
right,
the top six.
Like the owner, the owner made that statement, I think, on don't know if it was the podcast or radio in Toronto, but that they were going to go out and try and get a second line center and a veteran defenseman. And when
And
I heard that,
specifically a veteran right-hand defenseman.
there you go.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I was like, good.
They're going to do it.
That's exactly what they need right now. A good veteran defenseman to help stabilize things until the kids are ready to take over, give them some insulation, and a center because even before they ran into the Pinto and White injuries, you had a feeling that they were going to need more support in the middle, right? I mean, everybody thought Chris Tierney at some point would be moving along, and that you'd need a guy that, as the season went on, would be able to come in and take over that veteran center role. But unfortunately, neither of those things happened for whatever reason. I don't think we've been given a clear explanation after the owner made that the priority why it wasn't fulfilled.
Yeah, I don't think we ever had a follow up about why. Yeah. We don't know if they kicked tires. We don't know if they tried to adjust that or not.
I think about the defenseman. I remember writing a piece during the summer when we were heading into the expansion draft. And, a lot of teams had to go through a few manipulations and juggling names and making some trades to get ready for the expansion draft, and there were a couple of names out there that, maybe they could have made a move on. And again, you don't know, did they kick tires? Did they try and maybe grab, a Jamie Alexiak? I thought would have been a great guy for this team, particularly because the coach seems to like the more rugged, rough and tumble type guys. But unlike most of the guys they've signed, Alexiak's a guy who's, in the prime of his career. He's not like he's good. Yeah. Yes, exactly. But that didn't happen. So again, it feels like it's another dismal replay of what we saw to start last season.
Yeah, and I mean, look at Ryan Graves. I believe it was Gordon
Wilson,
another
good one. Yeah,
who was on TSN 1200, and he kind of slipped in the little, note there about the Sens being in on Ryan Graves, and then apparently New Jersey just found a more suitable deal quicker and were able to get him. But apparently, the Sens were really in on him. And, I personally think that the Sens were probably pretty interested in Adam Larson if he had hit free agency.
Yeah.
Obviously, Seattle takes him, signs him to that contract right away. But kind of on this topic, Brian here in our YouTube chat is asking, why didn't the Sens pull the trigger on either of those two positions that they were interested in, and whether asking prices were too high? So if you want to give your insight on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question, and I don't think we've had an in-depth answer as to why that happened. Man, you hope that they were kicking tires and that they were deep into talks. I talked to a few player personnel directors, and they had said that they had heard that the Senators were sniffing around a few players, but that nothing that really elevated to getting down to like a final negotiation type thing. But to me, it feels like there were some missed opportunities there in the summertime, because the types of guys we're talking about would seem to be the ones that, you could keep around for 2, 3, 4 years, that when you did start on your 5-year run of unparalleled success, that they could still be a part of the picture, right? That they could still be contributing. They could still be important contributing members of that team.
And one of the things that kind of brings me back to this, being told one thing and then another happening. If you always sort of knew you didn't have a right-hand defenseman in the system that fulfilled the needs that you were looking for, why did you let go of Dylan DeMello?
Wow, that was a drum. That was a drum that I was beating loud and long at the time. Here was a guy who never really got a shot in San Jose, right? If you'll remember, they had a stacked blue line. He was like a healthy scratch for 20 straight games, I think, at one point. They didn't want to put him on waivers because they knew if they did that he was going to get snapped up. So, he just wanted an opportunity to be a regular in the National Hockey League, and he got that opportunity here in Ottawa, and he really appreciated it. I had many
And
conversations
thrived.
with Dylan.
Yeah.
I had many conversations with him. He wanted to be here. That's the other thing that's like was disappointing to me when he ended up getting traded. Was here was a guy who was ready to take a reasonable deal, and he loved playing here. He wanted to be here, and still winds up getting moved along. But how would that right side look now if you had Dylan DeMello, who played great with Shabbat, and you had Zub, and now you have Lassie Thompson coming in, and you'll have to figure out what you're going to do with Zaitsev. Make some kind of deal where you do a salary dump and you give up an asset or two just to get it off your books. But boy, I would love the look of the Senators' right side compared to what it is now if Dylan DeMello was still in the mix, and just a great guy. Remember all the social media stuff?
Oh, he was
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, he was excellent.
amazing.
Like,
I was actually gonna.
He was such an asset for the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was gonna add
That's
on
one
the
they should have
DeMello
never let go.
Yeah.
Really? I mean, looking back, and that's not 2020 hindsight or anything else. The guy wanted to be here. He was ready to sign a reasonable contract, and he was totally in on everything the Senators were doing.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add on that. Winnipeg left him exposed in the expansion draft, and I was like, man, he's exposed. He's got like 3 years left at $3 million. It's one of those players where it's cost controlled asset.
Yeah.
A player who's played on your team before, who's had good chemistry. Shabbat. I was so shocked. Like the Senators didn't try and swing a deal with the Kraken to have them draft.
Yeah, good point.
DeMello,
See, that's why I talk about and there's an opportunity that's gone now, right? Like we saw with Vegas how many great deals they made.
Yeah.
And it just seemed to me that if you were a team in the Senators' position, you had lots of cap space, you're looking to add assets at this point, that was a great opportunity for the opportunity to maybe grab a couple of players that could be part of your long-term plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, great insight there, Chris. We appreciate that. And one sort of semi-final question. We might have time for one more, depending on how things go.
Yeah.
But DJ Smith and Pierre Dorion both signed extensions this offseason. Who do you think is going to be with the team longer? Do you think they stick with the GM long term, or do you think that DJ is the guy for the foreseeable future? Or
where's McGuire?
What a great that's a great question. I wonder what the betting line and the odds would be on that one. Interesting question. Like you said, they both signed extensions, so they're kind of joined at the hip right now. Pierre's had a couple of hires now, Dorion. And, for me, all you have to do is look around the National Hockey League, the history of the league. The general manager only gets so many opportunities, I think, unless you're in Montreal, to try and to try and find the right mix, try and find the right coach, try and find the right players. That's a great question. The way I would look at it, it would be more along the lines of, does Pierre Dorion get to hire another coach? Would be, to me, the more interesting question, because they've given DJ the extension now. And to me, it's almost like hiring another coach, right? You've given this guy the vote of confidence now. You're basically saying, yep, from what we've seen the first couple of years, this is our guy. We like what he's doing. We think the potential is there. So yeah, that would be my question: is does Pierre Dorion get to hire another coach?
Now,
I think Pierre, with where the team is at now, Pierre's bought himself some time, right? With the rebuild, you got show a little bit of patience. Pieces are in place. The Carlson deal is like one of the best deals in the National Hockey League in the last few years.
Yeah.
And every GM's going to make deals where he doesn't win the deal. Look at anybody's track record. I mean, any GM's record, there's going to be a couple of
he's got a few of them.
Like to do. Yes. But that Carlson deal, I think, basically saved his job and is the reason why he's got an extension now. So I think he's bought himself some time. But it's going to be interesting now. Is it enough time to get to the finish line with DJ Smith?
Now, do you think that DJ Smith it will have like a fairly short leash if this season is a complete bomb and then next season starts out
Yeah,
rocky?
that's another good question. I I I I think after having given him the extension and given this team's track record of having the internal budget, I think they're going to be very reluctant to be in a position where they're paying somebody not to coach for any kind of long term. Now,
Yeah.
if you get to the last year, you're halfway through the last year, and clearly it's not still not working, then I think I could see an in season change take place then. But I think with the way this team is operated financially, I see that I see moving on from DJ Smith as a non-starter.
All right, well, we're going to throw one final one your way before you go. So, the Sens and I guess DJ Smith had Tim Stützle playing center in the line rush combinations this morning. So, I mean, analytically, because here, Brian had another question here. He was bringing
Yeah.
up Timmy, and he talks about his defensive skills. Now, analytically, actually, Stützle's been one of our best defensive forwards, which is very interesting. But he hasn't played center since I think before his draft
You
year.
said 3 years, yeah.
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 So is that something that's that like I guess screams of desperation, or do you think that this is something that they actually should have tried earlier when Pinto first went down?
Yeah. I I'm a bit old school, I guess. I think that's a tall order to ask a teenager to step in and play center in the National Hockey League because especially with the train wreck that this team has been in its own zone. I could see, a kid like Stützle, his confidence taking a pounding if he's supposed to be the number one guy, the number one forward in the zone, and get the rush started, get them organized in their end, which they haven't been able to do. I just see all of that as being a hell of a lot for a kid finding his way in the National Hockey League to handle. And don't forget, like last year was a one off, right? With the short season, playing in the one division,
Mhm.
he's got all kinds of new experiences hitting him in the face this year
Yeah.
now. He's on the road in the States for the first time. He's playing against a bunch of teams he's never seen before, players he's never seen before, in rinks that he's never seen before. Um, so yeah, I think it's a lot to hit a kid with. Um, Giving it a try. I don't mind giving it a try. Nick Paul, I think at time has struggled trying to play the center position. I think he's a hell of a lot better winger than he is a center. But with the lack of depth and the injuries, I mean, the coach doesn't have a heck of a lot of options. So I would be on DJ Smith's side a little bit on this one. He hasn't been given much to work with. And I think as a one off to see how Stützle handles it, I don't have a problem with it. But the coach said, I believe, they'll be monitoring closely, and as soon as they
Yeah.
feel like he's in over his head, that they'd move him back to the wing and shift Nick Paul back to center.
Hmm.
But I'm interested in what you guys think. Is it significant to you that Stützle plays at center? Because I've always been kind of there's three forwards on the ice, and I think we attach a little bit too much importance in terms of who's playing center. I mean, is this a
Yeah.
big deal to you that Tim Stützle is going to get a shot at center?
I think he's shown the ability to drive his line, whether he's playing on the wing or not. And we were speaking before in a recent episode. Jake Batherson has been one of the driver's seat on that top line
Yeah.
all season
Yeah.
long. I mean, he's the one skating with the puck down the middle into the zone. He's the one creating chances. I mean,
Yep.
center is sure you take more faceoffs. You do have more expectation to be helping out on the back end, but to a certain extent, you could almost say it's a frame of mind. And Stützle and Batherson have both shown that they can have high impact on the way that the team sets up and plays in the offensive end, playing from the wing. So
Yeah. And I think the other thing, the way the game has evolved is yes, is the center the guy who typically has most of the responsibility in his own zone in terms of diving down a little bit deeper to help out the defense. That's been the case over the years. I think what we've also seen change is whoever the first guy back is now is typically the guy who goes down deep into the zone. So if it's Nick Paul, he's going to be the guy that's going to be going down around the goal line, and Tim Stutzla would read that and then post up a little higher out near the hash marks. So I think the way the game has evolved, it's not always on the center to be the number one defensive guy in your own zone. So I think that'll help him as well. What's going to be interesting is they're on the road, so the opposition coach is going to have the shot at the matchups, and that's where I'd be a little bit leery about playing Stutzla at center, is that the next 3 games are on the road. I would much rather see, in a perfect world, this experiment taking place when they were playing at home, where the coach could control the matchups a little better.
And let's be honest, they might not need Stutzla at center if they get the first overall pick in the upcoming draft.
Well, and isn't that another interesting scenario now, because there is always going to be, I don't know where you guys fall on this, but there's always going to be a segment of Sens Nation that are going to be of the opinion that, hey, we're pretty much in last place now at the end of November. Let's stay here. Let's, have the pain for Shane or whatever the expression's going to be this year for Shane Wright.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to listen to the back and forth between Senators fans in terms of whether it should be Tank Nation or try and win every game between here and April.
For me personally, I don't want the Sens to actively tank. I obviously want them to win like every game, being a fan. But to me, it's like, I look at this roster and I think they could benefit from a star player. So for me, it's like, if they end up picking first overall, which I know there's still a lot of time for things to change, but if they do, and they do draft a player like Shane Wright, then I'm going to be very happy because the future looks even brighter. And if they end up winning,
I can't disagree with you on that.
Yeah.
Not
and
at
like
all.
If they end up winning, like 50% of their remaining games, then fine, whatever. Like, I'm cool with that too. It doesn't really matter to me. I think the top 10 of this year's draft is quite good, so I'll take a top 10 pick, but I'm fine if they finish outside that.
Yeah, somebody had a great text into the radio station the other day talking about, the fool's gold points near the end of a season, right? When you're in that, when you're in the garbage time of the season, like they did last year, where they were, wallowing near the bottom and then, rocketed up to the 10th spot in the draft. Early yet, it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. But again, the pressure is being ratcheted up on everybody here. The rebuild might be over, but the pressure now on the coaching staff, for me, that's where most of the pressure is now, is on the coaching staff to show that they've got some kind of coherent structure to make this team play better defensively. And so far, I'm not seeing evidence of that. So to me, that's at the top of my list of hot button issues as we move forward into December here.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great way to end it. I mean, we appreciate you coming and joining us for over 30 minutes here. So thank you so much,
guys. Yep. No, I love the conversation and happy to have it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Chris. You can dip whenever you want. We're going to do a little bit of post game talk, I guess you could call it. But
all right.
Again, thanks so much. Yeah.
I'm out.
Thanks again.
Like Peace. I said, reach out whenever you want. Yep.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Bye. You too.
All right, so thanks to CJ, Chris, for joining us tonight. That was a lot of fun. I think other Matt was having some difficulties there, some technical difficulties, so he might come back. I'm not sure, but no, I think that was a good way to end the conversation on, like, what do we really expect the Sens to be this year? I mean, I think they have higher aspirations definitely than to finish in the bottom 10, let alone the bottom 5 or even the last place team. Like, I think before the season, everyone was joking, like, oh, Buffalo is going to be trash. Well, don't look now, but Buffalo is definitely ahead of us in the standings. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think, Bennett?
Yeah, I mean, you know me, I'm absolutely team tank. As far as I'm concerned, I'm absolutely ready to throw in the towel, and not just from the perspective of just call the mulligan, take the development year, let these guys grow, whatever, like all that stuff that we talked about. Yes, but to your point as well about like this team needs another star. This team needs one more high end impact player in among our forward core here. We have the barest, like the barest top six that we could possibly hope to compete with, and we really need one more injection of high end talent to go there. I think
Yeah.
before we can really start to say this team can do some damage a few years down the road, because right now we're just too thin. Our forward core is too thin. We had a couple injuries, not even necessarily to our best forward players, but like guys who just hold down spots, and I mean we've seen how exposed we've been because of it.
Yeah, and I'll add other Matt back in here because he's reconnected. But I was just gonna say, like, going off that, you were talking about the top six. If we look at the top six, you got Kachuk, Norris, Batherson. Coach loves keeping those guys together. Hypothetically, if the Sens finish, I mean, I'm not gonna say like Shane Wright because there's so many games left. I think like what 67 games left, something like that.
Yeah. Never bank on winning the draft lottery.
Yeah, exactly, right. But hypothetically, if the Senators did end up with a second line of Stützle, Wright, and like if they went into free agency and the rumors are true that Giroux would want to return to near his hometown and play locally, you could have not only a lethal top six, but then that means you're pushing a guy like Shane Pinto to the third line, and he's a very responsible two-way player.
Yeah.
You're looking very set to really enter that contention level. And honestly, I think that's the go move. The big thing is going to be whether they can help the defensive core get there. Now, I know Sanderson's in the wings. He'll probably be joining the team out of college this year. That at least builds your top four. If you can have, Shabbat, Zub, Sanderson, and Thompson, if he continues to progress the way he has, they may send him to the AHL. And then if you can have a bottom pairing of, if the coach allows, because we know how DJ is with Brandstrom, but like Brandstrom and JBD or something like that, like that looks like a core that you can really start to see some progression and some hope for a very successful future. It's just kind of trimming the dead weight, and like Delzato, for example, has one more year on his contract. Like, what's going to happen with him? Is he just going to be a seventh defenseman again? So, yeah, I think honestly, like, I'm not trying to be a buzzkill. I just think that this year you kind of run with how things are going, and
I don't think
pans out.
I don't think there's any buzz to kill. Like, there's no, like, it's just like this team isn't ready. We know it isn't ready. Pretending otherwise just because like it feels good to not think your team is crap is just like doing a disservice, because like we know we don't have enough pieces to compete. So it's like trying to paper over the cracks and say actually it's fine. The thing about acquiring those better pieces too is like depth can come from and Brian mentions a player like Colin White. It's like we know Colin White can't cut it in the top six. So what we want is to have enough depth in the top six that a guy like him plays further down in the lineup where he can be effective.
The other thing with
it's like we have Nick Paul, we have Connor Brown, we have like guys like that are playing up in the top six right now because of all of the injuries and the lack of depth and stuff. And we've seen Nick Paul was so good on the third line last year. He is out of his depth on the second line.
Yeah.
And so we have to insulate those guys because we have good depth players, but when we force them to play up in the lineup because we don't have the high end pieces, then the whole lineup suffers because now our third line isn't good. And our good third liners are getting cratered on the second line.
Yeah. Also, Brian, I do have to say I did forget about Colin White, so that's fair. But I think in Colin White's case, my mindset has kind of been, if you're the Ottawa Senators and you look at a guy like Colin White, he's 25 right now. So if you buy him out before he turns 26, the cost that you actually have to pay in salary cap hit is way lower. I think the Sens would only have to have a cap hit of about $865K over the next I think 5-6 years. So if you only have to pay 865K and you free up that other like $4 million, that's money that goes towards like Norris or Stutzla or Zub when those contracts come up. I think it's just like a better use of the money. And like Chris was saying earlier, if you can shed a contract like Zaitsev to someone like Arizona, who seems to love picking up players that have really no potential or hockey skills anymore, just to acquire draft picks, like that might be ideal too. Um, and also, Brian asked, "Is Shane Wright NHL ready?" And I don't think he'll be NHL ready, but I do think like one more year in the OHL to dominate, then come back to the NHL roster the following season. That's kind of like the timeline, I think. But who knows? Like, he had a slow start out of the gate, but he's a very, very good player. So it'll just
I wouldn't be
depend.
surprised. Yes, I am back. Apparently, my
Yeah, your
Wi-Fi
internet
just
works.
decided to be really bad. I think Shane Wright plays a like a very good two-way game that I think his game can translate just a little better than guys like Lafreniere, for example. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if he did, if we lucked out and were able to draft a guy like him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the NHL, and with the guys like Norris and Pinto being able to play that first and second line, it just gives him the opportunity to get acclimated on the third line, still playing with good players. Good competition being faced, and then he can just move up as time goes on. I think there are going to be a lot of guys you're surprised that will be able to make the transition to the NHL in the upcoming draft, and I definitely see him being one of those guys.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I'm gonna go catch like a Kingston Frontenacs game, weather versus 67s are in Kingston, so I'll have to see how he looks out there. But that would be nice. But there's a lot of good players in the top 10. So
Yeah,
I'm trying not to,
yeah,
think that the Sens will end up with Shane Wright, because we really have no clue.
yeah. I think Shane Wright would be, the ideal candidate. You get a guy who plays both sides of the ice and is dominant. But I mean, I have a, I have a crush on Logan Cooley and how good of a center he is. And Matthew Savoy is excellent as well.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really quality centers in this draft. There are some good right hand defensemen as well, but I just think with Lassie Thompson doing what he's done, with Zub doing what he's done, Jacob Bernard Docker going to be ready, like we have the right side is I wouldn't say set. I mean, if you can luck into something amazing, but I think there's not a guy in our system that can play 1C other than Josh Norris. And if you have a 1-2 punch of one of those guys and Josh Norris, that's a pretty ideal situation. Because next year, if we are this bad, then I can guarantee you that Pierre Dorian would get fired.
To heads roll, yeah. I mean, and even DJ Smith, like I know he was extended for another 2 years after this one.
Yeah,
it was 2 years. Yeah.
So this year plus 2, I know what CJ was saying about not canning him with term left on his contract, but if the Sens get out to a start like this next year, I don't know, man.
It's not going to be acceptable, because
no,
that would be, I believe, the fourth year of the 5 years of unparalleled success, and I can't imagine Melnyk being okay with that. And frankly, I don't know why the Sens fan base would be either. This year is like, I think this is the limit of how crap we can be. It's nice to be in games like we are, I as I said, like, ideal games are, you put up a bunch of points, your young guys score, and you lose the game because you go in, you get a good draft pick, and then the next year you're ready to go. That to me is ideal. And then next year, like, you should be running a D core of Shabbat, Zub, or Shabbat Thompson and Sanderson Zub. Like that is a nasty, nasty top 4 defense pairing in the National Hockey League, especially if Sanderson does play to the potential that he has been showing in the NCAA. And frankly, he's a man among boys there. And you're going to be able to see that at the World Juniors, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And I would imagine Cleven's going to be there too. And he's obviously not going to be ready soon as Sanderson is. But there's a lot to look forward to next year. And we'll get to see Sanderson at the end of this season. But if we start like this next year, I can't imagine in any scenario that an owner or your president of hockey operations or whomever would be okay with that, especially when you're putting out blind promises with empty returns, and going out and getting a top 4 defenseman and top 6 center.
Yeah, and they could have made something like that happen at the expansion draft. Like, they totally could have made something happen. Now, I don't know what assets were being asked. Obviously, we're not privy to those conversations, but like I was saying to Chris earlier, if a guy like DeMello is available in the expansion draft and you're the Ottawa Senators and you know that he had good chemistry with Shabbat and you know that he's cost controlled for like the next 2-3 seasons at $3 million per, that's a guy who you bring in, and then then you can keep like Zub on your first line, or you can have him on your second line, like defensive pairings. But like it gives you more flexibility on that right side, rather than like, okay, well, we need to take Zub away from Shabbat to have more effective pairings. Let's put Shabbat with Zaitsev. It's like it's just, why would you put an anchor on your best player?
And I'm stealing from Peter to pay Paul in that scenario, like. It's just like let's have a good pairing to have a mediocre pairing. Clearly, getting rid of the problems is a good solution, but until we see our general manager step up and say, you know what, I'm not. I don't think. Playing Josh Brown and Nikita Zaitsev and Victor Mete and Michael Del Zotto even are good solutions to this problem, because frankly, like, Dorion should have seen this Del Zotto thing coming from a mile away. If they actually improved their pro scouting from time to time, they would see that some of these issues wouldn't be happening if they did go out and get quality veterans, but yet here we are.
Yep. So Andre actually pops up and says, what are your feelings about Sens goaltending? With all the draft capital and money, I feel goaltending still need area. Your thoughts? Now, before other Matt jumps in on this, because I know you love talking goalies, I just want to say that because I love talking about the draft, this is something where drafting a guy like Wallstead instead of Boucher would have been nice, but you can't change the past, so it is what it is. But I mean, like with Murray, Gustafson, the pipeline having Sogard, Mandalize, and Marilainen, what do you think, other Matt?
Well, you're absolutely right. Drafting Jesper Wallstedt would have been awesome. We would have had the arguably the best goalie prospect pool in the NHL. Even drafting Kosa would have been a better move than drafting Tyler Boucher. And, if you want to get to my feelings on Tyler Boucher, we can get there. But this is goaltending, so we're going to talk about that. Genuinely, Philip Gustafson has been a bright spot this season, and he was a bright spot last season. Last time he checked, he had a .915 save percentage on a terrible team. Which is very difficult to do. And even after last night's shellacking, he was not the problem. He kept us in the game most of the time. I don't think goaltending is the area of concern right now. I think one of the goaltenders' contracts and going forward, it definitely is, in Matt Murray. He makes far too much money to play so little games, and I haven't seen a jump in his play since he's been back. I would like to see him, improve, because that is a big contract to give out to a goalie for them not to perform. At least it's not Sergei Bobrovsky.
Although he's
not-
playing well, I know his contract is
exactly his
like
contract.
he's playing well, but his contract.
Yeah.
Oof.
But ultimately, I think if you wanna, if goaltending is a point of contention, I think it's more you need to look at the defensive capabilities of our defensemen and our forwards, because Gustafson bailed us out probably 10 times last night, and he makes me feel confident when he's in net.
Honestly, with the amount of high danger chances they got last night, the score could have been much worse. Like that game could have, and even on the Sens side, like they had some chances that were pretty good that I think were, Kempfer had a bad night, but I think he did still make a few saves that were key. But man, like that game could have been, like a 10-7 type of game. Like it was just that high octane. But
I think on the goaltending question, couple things to note. First of all, we talked about the goaltending still being a bit of a problem area for the Sens with Chris. The Sens goals against per game right now is 3.69. Our team save percentage is 893. The league average is 907. So to have league average goaltending that's not even like good goaltending. That's just kind of like not terrible goaltending. And I think you don't necessarily need a superstar goalie to have a chance at building a competitive team. Like if Gustafson was playing like he is now with a competent defense, then together I think you could have an effective back end. Corey Crawford won 2 cups for Chicago and was never a world beater as a goalie. Like his stats were good, but they weren't like vintage Carey Price good. They weren't Vasilevsky good. Like he was just like a very effective goaltender. He wasn't like a superstar. He was just good enough, and he had good defenders playing in front of him, and that was enough to win. And so I don't think that at this point, Sens goaltending 5 years from now is what's going to be holding us back. I think that 5 years from now, imagine all the bad. Okay, maybe this is wishful thinking. Imagine all the bad contracts that we currently have are gone, and all of our star prospects are signed. If you imagine what that team looks like, and you imagine, say, Gustafson and net, somebody backing him up,
so
I think that could be. I think the biggest problem would still be the forward core at that point. So
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I mean, the Sens have 6 draft picks in the first 3 rounds of this upcoming draft, so I don't know. It's a draft where I think at least the first 2 rounds, maybe 3 rounds, have a lot of talent in them. So hopefully,
I want them
years.
to swing for the fences on a lot of those picks. This is a draft that it's the last draft that you're going to have high picks with. So you sort of go balls to the wall. And I was talking to my Uncle Bill about this. This is the second plug of Uncle Bill. We're a big Uncle Bill podcast.
We stand Uncle Bill in this chat.
Yeah. But we were talking about it, and I said to myself, and it's really shocking that they've made some really good picks, and they built up the positivity of the Sens fan base with their drafting. Pinto was a bit of an off the board pick, and then he has an amazing season. Greg was a bit of off the board pick. Yerventi was a bit of off the board pick. They both have great seasons. Drake Batherson, overager, great pick. Yep. All of those things. And then they pick Tyler Boucher, who has 2 points in 13 games. It's not a good
Apparently
look.
He's looked like he's improving, but I also think he's being played on like the 4th line, so that doesn't really give him much opportunity.
No, every lineup I see, he's on the second line.
Oh, okay. So he is playing.
So,
I heard that he had been like bouncing around the lineup and had been kind of in the bottom 6. So
it's one of those things that, as I said, this is the last draft that we're going to be able to stock the cupboards, and yes, we hope. And our forwards are the ones that need the most care. So They should at least draft 3 wingers and 1 center, or 2 wingers, 2 centers, and then maybe focus on D. And because there's not a strong goaltender contingent in this draft, but these are things that they should be considering going forward. But Bennett, you hit it on the money. The forward core is going to be the one that's most questionable as a cup contending team.
Yeah, it's like the problems that the team have right now are not necessarily the problems that we'll still have in a couple of years. And it's like right now, goaltending is an issue, defense is an issue. 5 years from now, when Murray's gone somehow, probably when Zaitsev's gone, Delzato, Josh Brown, and they're replaced by these guys in the pipeline that we know are going to be good enough, then our problems will be different from what they are today. I mean, arguably, you could say, like, forward core is still a problem today, but it's possibly not the biggest problem, but 5 years from now it will be the biggest problem.
Well, on that note, thank you everybody who's tuned in so far, and or at least bits and pieces of the live stream. I know it's been an hour, so thanks for hanging in there. We're on YouTube because you're watching us here, but we're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, all that stuff. So please go ahead and follow us there if you like the podcast format. The live streams will be exclusive to YouTube, but we will also do weekly Spotify and podcast episodes. Aside from that, we're on all the social media platforms, so go ahead and find us at Senstennial or The Senstennial. You'll be able to find us pretty easy. And we hope to see you all here next time. And thanks so much for watching, everybody. And go Sens go, most importantly.
Go Sens go. Thanks for tuning in. Take it easy.
I'm waiting for other Matt to do his eccentric Go Sens go that he always does.
Go Sens go, baby.
Nothing today, eh? That's all he gives us.
Go Sens go.
God. All right, thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah.